The streets were quiet the night it happened, blanketed in the stillness that comes when most of the town has gone to bed. In the heart of that small community stood a modest corner shop, owned by a man everyone knew. He was the kind of shopkeeper who remembered birthdays, offered extra credit to families who couldn't afford their groceries, and always had a kind word ready for anyone who walked through his door. He was more than a businessman. He was part of the neighborhood's fabric. But on that night, something terrible unfolded. Behind his own store, the man's lifeless body was discovered, and with it, the peace of the community shattered. The murder was brutal and senseless, a crime that left residents reeling with grief and fear. Whispers of suspicion rippled through the town. No one could understand how such a thing could happen here, in a place so ordinary, so safe. Police flooded the area, determined to bring answers. But the killer had been meticulous. The scene was scrubbed clean of fingerprints. There were no obvious weapons, no witnesses willing to step forward. Days passed, and still, investigators were left with empty hands. The story of the beloved shopkeeper was threatening to fade into another unsolved tragedy. Yet fate has a way of weaving hidden threads. On the night of the murder, while most of the town slept, a man named Daniel was walking home. He was not a detective, not a man seeking adventure, but simply an office worker returning from a late shift. His thoughts were consumed with the mundane rhythm of life. What to eat for dinner, what meetings awaited him the next morning. Then, as he passed a narrow alley, something caught his eye. A figure moved quickly through the shadows, clutching a bag that sagged heavily with its contents. The figure's movements were hurried, almost frantic, with nervous glances cast over their shoulder. Their face, pale under the dim streetlight, was tense, strained, as if weighed down by more than just a bag. For a moment, Daniel slowed. His instincts whispered that something was wrong. But fear, or perhaps the simple urge to mind his own business, pulled him forward. He told himself it was none of his concern that people in the city carried all sorts of things at night. And so, he kept walking, leaving the image behind. The next morning, the news spread like wildfire. The shopkeeper had been murdered. As Daniel listened, the memory of the shadowy figure surged back with startling clarity. The alley, the hurried pace, the heavy bag. It was as if puzzle pieces had fallen into his lap, but he wasn't sure whether they truly fit. Doubt gnawed at him. What if it was just coincidence? What if he was imagining a connection where none existed? The unease grew heavier as the day wore on. Silence, he realized, would serve no one. At last, he summoned the courage to approach the police and share what he had seen. His account was precise, his memory sharp. The direction of the figure, the way they clutched the bag, the uneasiness that hung in their expression. Investigators, though cautious, took his word seriously. They searched the area Daniel described and discovered a single security camera mounted above a nearby repair shop. The footage was grainy, blurred, but undeniable. A figure rushing through the alley, carrying a bag. Exactly as Daniel had remembered, it was a spark detectives needed. Piece by piece, they traced the suspect's movements from camera to camera, reconstructing the path through the city. Along the route, evidence surfaced. Items discarded hastily, including clothing stained with blood, partially burned in a dumpster. With every discovery, the picture grew clearer. Within weeks, the suspect was identified, confronted, and arrested. The case that had threatened to wither in silence was suddenly alive with answers. Justice had found its way back into the community, and the shadow of fear that had loomed over them began to lift. Behind the headlines and courtroom drama, one truth stood taller than the rest. None of it would have been possible without Daniel. His choice to speak, when he could have stayed silent, had cracked open the case. His willingness to share a detail that others might have dismissed became the thread detectives pulled until the truth unraveled. Daniel never considered himself a hero. He was just a man walking home from work, a bystander who stumbled upon a moment of unease. But heroes are not defined by uniforms or titles. They're defined by action. In that one moment, Daniel's decision to step forward altered the course of an entire investigation and gave peace to a grieving town. The story of the shopkeeper's murder is not only about tragedy. It is about the hidden power in ordinary people. It is about the reminder that sometimes the smallest observations, the quietest voices, hold the weight to shift entire outcomes. And so, the town remembered their shopkeeper for his kindness, but they also came to honor the quiet courage of Daniel, the unlikely hero whose simple act of conscience ensured that justice prevailed. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary heroes are the ones no one expects. Stories like this remind us of the strength hidden in everyday people. For more tales of unlikely heroes whose actions changed everything, subscribe and stay with us as we uncover the extraordinary in the ordinary.